Hello and welcome to this new video. It's the last about the Navigator. Here I will talk about the real importance of the stars, the sun, the planets and the moon, and how they work on our daily life navigating, just traveling or not. It was a song from my youth, very popular, called The Age of Aquarius, and it started like this: when the moon is in the seventh house and Jupiter lines with Mars, we're entering the age of Aquarius. What does it have to do with navigation? Everything. We have to understand that we're traveling on a spaceship called Earth. And although we do not have control, we don't go with this spaceship where we want. It takes us on a big journey at an incredible speed, beyond comprehension, turns on itself, make rounds around the sun, and travels in the universe, and moving with these billions of stars of Milky Way, turning around a massive black hole in the middle of the Milky Way. So the moment of human civilization woke up, the human being woke up, look at the stars, look at the sky, he obviously understood that there was winter, summer, spring, autumn, and there was night and day, and the moon changed phases, there were eclipses and everything. He started thinking and studying this, besides in the beginning when they left to be hunters and grabbers of being people with okay, we know how to write and read, and we have some sort of technological developments. There was on the 2nd century before Christ, on the Gregorian calendar, a Greek cartographer, astronomer, mathematician called Hipparchus. He is credited to be the father of trigonometry, and he discovered the precession of equinoxes. As you know, the Earth wobbles. And he devised a gadget. He designed an instrument to measure this star's movement, map it, so he could predict a lot of things on this with his instrument. This instrument is better known as the astrolabe. It was first known record of the use of the astrolabe and the design was Hipparchus, but there's another record by another guy, another mathematician, also Greek, Theon of Alexandria, and notably his daughter Hypatia, and somebody credited to her the construction of the astrolabe, which is not exactly true. She used it, so historian says. In the 8th century, the medieval Islamic, the golden era of the Islamic world, there were a series of essays, and based on them, a mathematician called Mohammed al-Fazari built the first astrolabe in the Muslim world. They added angular scales and other lines, arcs, to calculate the azimuth. And they're basically used for navigation. In the navigation they used inland, and in the Mediterranean they're known to navigate on the coast, especially the Omani, that went all the east coast of Africa, and but then that was after the Portuguese came to West Africa. And also the main use of the astrolabe was to get right directions to the Mecca for the prayers, Salah. They used the astrolabe to calculate the times, the correct time of the sunset and sunrise for the Salah, and also the start of the month of Ramadan. As you may know, the Ramadan is a month in the calendar, Islamic calendar, and they are based on lunar cycles. So it's shorter than our month in the Gregorian calendar, and the precise moment that you enter the Ramadan is when there is the new moon. So that's also a calculation for that with the astrolabe. So that's why sometimes you find the information that when does the Ramadan start? Oh, start this day, this date, or this time at this date. It's because of the calculations done by according to diverse methods of the imams responsible for giving their people the right time for the Ramadan, and they use the astrolabe for that. The contact with the Muslim civilization in the Iberic Peninsula, the Europeans and Christian world got the astrolabe, and together with other instruments they devised ways to navigate beyond on their construction of their ships. They went far beyond the coast and used that for their advantage to get to the places where they wanted and back. So they used for these navigations the quadrant, the ballistilia, and the astrolabe. And all these elements are present in the sextant, but there was no such a thing at that time because the longitude was a mystery. So there was no almanac to make the calculations. There was no known science for the calculation of a precise position on coordinates, but they used that for mapping. This is the quadrant. This is the ballistilia, the Portuguese astrolabe. If you look at the modern astrolabe, do you see any similarity with this? So as you see, astrolabes are still being manufactured and used today. So how can one tell that we are entering the age of Aquarius, or that Saturn is entering the second house, predicting events based on the influence of celestial body? The astrology is one of the 1,000 uses the astrolabe that Al-Sufi said in the 10th century. Even the three wise men follow a star. Here I stop for a story of mine. As a curiosity, the longitude, as I said before, was a mystery until clockmaker and captor Mr. John Harrison discovered the longitude, and he did it by creating a marine chronometer, very precise, that solved the puzzle. And it was used based on the noon time of the Greenwich Observatory in London. And The clock was set to noontime, as exactly noontime over Greenwich, and was never changed and kept at that time so they could calculate exactly, precisely the longitude they were in. Well, every 15 degrees of longitude is an hour that around the globe turns in 24 hours. And every degree has 60 minutes. 1 minute is a nautical mile, and a nautical mile, and that's very true in the equator as distance wise. As you travel northbound, the parallels, as lines that cut the Earth in parallel lines, you go north on the latitudes, the longitude is different. They converge on the poles, so it's distorted in high latitudes, as 1 mile distance on the ground is not exactly 1 degree. Anyway, if you open the chart and projections that used for calculation navigation, that turned to be 1 degree, 1 nautical mile, proportionally. Anyway, if you're traveling towards the pole, northern distance, high latitudes, and you're traveling a certain speed and you're crossing 15 degrees in 1 hour, I turned to the first officer, keep calculating, and as a joke, I would ask them, Mr. First Officer, you know what time is it down here on the ground? He would look at all the clocks and the gizmos. The computer says everything on board and says, well, don't know. Said, well, it's noontime. An hour passed, and I will repeat the question. And the answer, he would give me the same. I would say, well, it's noontime. We fly for hours. It's always noontime down on the ground because we're crossing these lines. And it's an interesting, it's like time traveling. Turning back to the stars, nowadays we abandon the use of stars to the science rocketry, launching satellites and computers to navigate. In the past, navigating high latitudes would be possible only with a mechanical compass and the stars, because of the position of the magnetic north and geographic north. They're so different that once you are in the geographic North Pole or magnetic, the compass will be pointing down instead of north. The digital world that gives us in navigation the possibility of precise flying with aid from ground-based radio aids, the flight management computer seen here, quickly evolved to the use of the same computers but aided by satellite constellation. We know GPS, the GLONASS, and the Galileo. All the charts have the same protocol as the constellation of satellites they're based on. For example, the GPS uses the WGS84, otherwise you find error that may be significant in precision navigation. Navigation is done through great circles. Forget this BS of Earth, flat Earth, chemtrails, or space laser invented by foolish clowns around the globe. When you're navigating through Great Circle, doing so, you may find yourself going over the North Pole, as I showed before. And here comes the sun. Our friend in the lower latitudes give us heat, life, nourish our plants, our body, and heat our homes. But in the high latitudes can be very inconvenient. The atmosphere, the ionosphere, and the ozonosphere that protect us are not so dense in the poles, not to mention the holes in ozonosphere. Astronauts have all sorts of mutations in space, from bone density to mutation in DNA. That was proven in a research with twin brothers. One was an astronaut, the other no. These mutations were caused by long exposure to cosmic rays. Therefore, we have to look into space weather. An occasional passenger takes an exposition like an X-ray on a medical examination. But the crews are different. They are exposed like the X-ray operator, but without the lead protection the X-ray operators carry with them. Flying crews are more exposed as they crisscross the sky and bombarded with cosmic ray all the time. The crews are informed weather, occasional weather en route, or weather at the destination or point of departure. But if you're flying high altitude latitudes, you also informed about space weather, like solar activities, the intensity of the cosmic rays from the solar flare. Recently, we had a massive explosion in the sun, and the effects are visible still today, felt on Earth. And the South Pacific radio transmissions were affected. And now and then people wonder if the satellite constellations will be put out of order by a solar flare, thus complicating our modern way of life, of navigating, communicating, and interacting with everything. Because of this late flare, it's very rare to see aurora or northern lights in the UK. It has been in late February this year. Normally, when you're flying, you see the aurora high above you, and it's like a curtain that is blowing in a light breeze. And with strong solar activities, they come to lower altitudes and lower latitudes as well. And once I found myself flying into it, just north of a US-Canada border over the Atlantic. It was an hypnotic and incredible, beautiful sight. It's not only the solar flare that can knock down our communication satellites navigation. The wars raging in parts of the world involving disrupting signals, jamming, or interfering with the satellite signals. Therefore, navigation based on GPS may be lost, and we walk a step back on the navigation progress scale. If things come to worsen, we will back to the old good sextant and the beautiful stars in the sky for navigation. Technology exists to navigate without the satellites. It's called astronavigation, and the computers can find the stars to navigate without ignoring the satellites, and it's based on its own database. At the end, Space Force is not a total BS after all. So we got to the end to this series. I hope you liked it. If so, subscribe, share it, and wait for next videos as I will talk about a totally different subject, nonetheless curious and mostly ignored in the world state of information. Stay safe and thank you very much. Bye.